The suitcase clicked open like it had a secret to spill. We were in the bedroom, and the late afternoon sun threw golden bars across the floor. Laura was talking fast, rambling, really, about how she didn't know whether to pack the navy bikini or the red one. I was nodding, half listening, kneeling beside the open suitcase, just playing the helpful husband. It was her girls' cruise, after all, a 5-day Caribbean escape with her old college friends. They'd done something similar last year, came back tanned, giggly, and a little too evasive when I asked questions. Still, I told myself it was harmless fun, a well-deserved break. Who was I to second-guess? But today something was off. I'd been watching her all morning, the way her hands trembled when she folded her dresses, the way her voice got high and forced every time she laughed. There was a tension to her movements, like a bad actor trying too hard to play it cool. Then the suitcase gave it away. She'd been trying to squeeze in a pair of heels, and I was helping her rearrange things. When I pulled out a rolled-up sundress to make room, a little clatter spilled out. 3 tiny foil-wrapped bottles bounced across the floor. At first, I thought they were mini alcohol shots. But when I picked one up, then another, my stomach dropped. They weren't alcohol. They were bottles of lube. And under the crumpled tank tops and beach towels, tucked deep into the corner of the bag like a guilty secret, were 5 unopened boxes of condoms. 5. Not a few for emergencies. Not a single box. 5. I just stared. For a second, I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Shit, she said too quickly. Her voice cracked. Oh my God, that's not mine. That must be a joke. The girls, they probably snuck that in there. I looked up slowly. Her eyes were wide. Too wide. And her smile came too fast, too forced. You know how they are, she added, voice all sugar. Total pranksters. I didn't say a word. Just held up one of the boxes and tilted my head. She snatched it from my hand like it burned her. Seriously, Jake. It's just a joke. Like, haha, bring this on your cruise in case you get lucky. You know how girls are when they drink. I nodded slowly, still crouched by the suitcase. Yeah, sure. And I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. I've always trusted Laura, maybe too much. We'd been married 7 years. No major fights, no real drama. She used to look at me like I was the only man in the room. And now she wouldn't meet my eyes. I zipped the bag shut and stood. You packed your passport? I asked. She blinked. What? Your passport? I repeated, like I hadn't just found enough protection for a small army. You'll need it for the cruise, right? She nodded, clearly relieved at the change of subject. Yeah, it's in my purse. I forced a smile and kissed her cheek. She flinched just slightly. That night, I lay beside her in bed, staring up at the ceiling fan spinning in slow, lazy circles. She fell asleep quickly, or pretended to. I listened to her breathing, too even to be real, and wondered how long this had been going on. Was it the first time? Had there been others? Was she already picturing him, whoever he was? My chest felt tight, like something had crawled into my ribs and died there. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her laughing with someone else, her tan legs wrapped around a stranger in some dim cabin on the sea. I got up and walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face. My reflection didn't look like me anymore. She'd lied. That much was clear. Whether it was a prank or not, her reaction had been rehearsed. She'd expected this. She'd planned it. She'd looked me in the eyes and decided I was gullible enough to swallow it. And honestly, maybe I had been. Until today, when I returned to the bedroom, she was curled into a ball, blanket pulled up to her shoulders like a child hiding from monsters. I stood there, watching her, wondering how I'd become the monster in this marriage. Or if I'd just been the fool all along. I crawled back into bed, careful not to touch her. As I lay there in the dark, my thoughts shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry, furious. She thought I'd never find out. That I'd stay behind like a good little husband while she played whatever game she'd been planning out there on the open sea. But she forgot one thing. I don't just lie down and take betrayal. She was going on her cruise. But I'd be going too. The next morning started with the smell of her perfume and the sound of wheels on hardwood. Laura was downstairs, dragging her suitcase toward the door, humming softly to herself like nothing had happened. I stood at the top of the stairs, watching her. The sunlight hit her just right. That glow she always carried when she felt in control. The same glow that used to draw me in. Try not to miss me too much, she said playfully when she noticed me. I smiled, the kind that didn't touch my eyes. I'll try my best. She gave a little laugh and went back to zipping up her bag. Mia's picking me up in 20 minutes. We're grabbing brunch before she drops me at the port. Mia, her younger sister, the family's wild one, sharp-tongued, never could keep a secret. If Laura was polished charm, Mia was raw honesty, the kind that could cut a person open with a few words. As Laura leaned over to double-check her purse, I caught myself staring at her. The curve of her hip in that sundress. The way her bare shoulders caught the morning light. I hated that I still felt that pull, that instinctive attraction that didn't care about logic or betrayal. She turned suddenly, catching my gaze. For a split second, something flickered behind her smile. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. Then she grabbed her sunglasses and said, "Wish me luck surviving 5 days of margaritas and sea air." "Good luck," I murmured. "And to be safe." She kissed me on the cheek, quick and practiced, and the door shut behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. For a long minute, I just stood there, staring at the empty hallway. Then I grabbed my phone. Mia picked up on the second ring. "Jake? Everything okay?" Her voice was groggy, like she'd just rolled out of bed. "I need to ask you something," I said. "About your sister." A pause. Then a sigh. "Oh boy, what did she do now?" "She's going on that cruise, right? With her friends?" "Yeah, the girls' getaway." "Why?" "She told you who's going?" "Sort of. Mostly her old college crowd." "Why?" Her voice sharpened. "Jake, what happened?" I hesitated, then told her. The suitcase, the lube, the condoms, the trembling hands. I kept my tone steady, factual, like I was reporting a crime instead of describing the moment my marriage cracked in half. When I finished, there was nothing but silence on the other end of the line. "Mia?" Her voice came out low, tired. "I'm not surprised." That hit harder than I expected. "You're not surprised?" She exhaled audibly. "Jake, I've been trying to ignore it for years, but yeah, I've heard things. Rumors. Every time she takes one of those girls' trips, something doesn't add up. There's always a guy. Always." My throat went dry. "You could have told me." "I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But she's my sister. I hoped I was wrong." The truth in her voice burned hotter than anger. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the faint ring her coffee cup had left from yesterday. "You think she's cheating again?" "I think," Mia said slowly. "You already know the answer." I rubbed my temples. I just needed to hear it from someone else. There was another pause, and then her tone softened. "Jake, you don't deserve this. She's been spiraling for a while, acting like she's still 25, chasing attention. You've been patient, loyal, and she's taking advantage of that." Her words hit deep. For the first time, I let myself admit how hollow I'd felt these last few months. The missed dinners, the late-night texts she'd hidden, the way she stopped reaching for me in bed. "What should I do?" I asked quietly. Mia didn't answer right away. Then she said, "You catch her. You make her face it. No more pretending." "How?" "She's posting everything these days. You know her. If there's a camera, she'll be smiling into it. Watch her socials." I almost laughed. "You think she'll post pictures of herself cheating?" "Maybe not the act," Mia said, "but she'll slip. She always does." I opened my laptop, heart thudding, and pulled up Laura's Instagram. Nothing new yet. Just the usual. Her coffee mug, her yoga mat, her carefully filtered life. And then, 2 hours later, as I sat at my desk trying to pretend I could still focus on work, my phone buzzed. A notification. Laura Whitmore posted a new photo. I clicked it. She was standing on the dock beside the cruise ship, sunglasses perched on her head, smile radiant and smug. Her caption read, "Bon voyage. A little adventure never hurt anyone." That was it. But the look in her eyes wasn't innocence. It was defiance. Like she knew I'd be watching. I didn't even think. I opened a travel site, found the same cruise line, and booked a ticket on the spot. My fingers moved on instinct, every keystroke fueled by a cocktail of fury and adrenaline. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I texted Mia again. "I'm going." Her reply came 30 seconds later. "Going where?" "On the cruise." "Same one." I already booked a ticket. There was a long pause before her next message. "Jake, are you sure about this?" "No, but I can't sit here and do nothing." Another pause. Then I'm coming with you." I stared at the screen. "Why would you?" Her next text cut me off. "Because you shouldn't have to face her lies alone." And for the first time in 24 hours, something inside me steadied. I didn't know what waited out there, But I wasn't going to be the fool in the dark anymore. As I stared at Laura's bright smile on my phone, I whispered to myself, "Let's see how real your little adventure gets, Laura." The truth was finally boarding. And this time, I had a ticket too. The ship was massive, a floating city, humming with music, lights, and the kind of shallow joy that makes your skin itch when you know you're not there for fun. I boarded alone, early enough to blend in with the first wave of sun chasers. Mia was scheduled to arrive 2 hours later, just in case Laura happened to be watching the check-in line. I kept my sunglasses on and a baseball cap low over my face. Not exactly a master disguise, but I wasn't planning to be seen. Not yet. The interior of the ship smelled like citrus and ambition. Crew members smiled too brightly, couples clung to each other in pool-ready outfits, and kids ran wild through the atrium. Everyone seemed to have a reason to smile. Except me. My room was on deck 8, balcony suite, facing the ocean. It felt dishonest, even a little luxurious. I didn't come for comfort. I came for answers. But I needed a base. Somewhere I could retreat, plan, recover. I spent the first hour unpacking and checking the cruise map on my phone. There were over 20 bars and lounges, multiple pools, spas, restaurants, and a nightclub the size of a gymnasium. If Laura wanted to hide, she had 100 options. If she wanted to be seen, even more. I wasn't sure which version of her I'd find. 2 hours in, I got the text from Mia. Boarded. Room 1034. I'll be out in 20. Don't worry, I look nothing like me. And she wasn't lying. When we met up on deck 5 near the adult pool, I barely recognized her. She wore oversized shades. Her normally curly dark hair straightened into a sleek ponytail, and her outfit was something halfway between casual chic and don't look too hard at me. You look like you're auditioning for a reality show, I said under my breath. She smirked. And you look like a divorced dad trying to blend into the background. Fitting. We didn't linger. The plan was simple. Stay apart in public, observe, and never let Laura spot us together. We weren't on vacation. We were on recon. That evening, after the first round of departure drinks and safety drills, the real show began. The ship's central promenade came alive. Music pouring from the open bars, laughter bouncing off polished floors, and passengers finally shedding their land-bound skin. I found a quiet corner near the piano bar, pretending to scroll through my phone as I watched the crowd. The longer I waited, the harder my heartbeat thudded in my chest. Then I saw her. Laura. She emerged from the casino entrance, a highball glass in hand, laughing, not the restrained chuckle she used at family gatherings, but the kind of open-throated laughter she hadn't let out around me in months. Maybe years. She looked beautiful, carefree, dangerous, and she wasn't alone. Trailing close beside her was a group of women I vaguely recognized from photos, her college friends. But it was the man beside her that caught my attention. Tall, tanned, confident. He wore a captain's hat tilted back on his head and a smirk like he'd already won something. She touched his arm when she laughed, leaning into him. Intimate. Easy. Something hot twisted in my gut. I told myself it was expected. This was why I was here. But seeing it, even just her touch on another man's forearm, ripped something open inside me. I didn't even notice Mia until she appeared beside me, 2 drinks in hand. She passed me one. Spotted, she asked. Yeah. I nodded toward the group. Casino bar. With him. Mia followed my gaze. Her jaw tightened. Well, she said, she certainly didn't waste time. Laura leaned in and whispered something into the man's ear. He laughed, then bent down, his lips brushing too close to her ear. Her hand lingered on his back as she turned. She hasn't even been on the boat 12 hours, I muttered. Think she's done this before? Mia asked quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We stayed for another 30 minutes, careful not to draw attention. Laura and her group moved to the dance lounge around 9, and we trailed behind at a distance, each playing our part, strangers in a sea of oblivious tourists. I stayed mostly in the shadows while Mia looped around, occasionally slipping into the bar crowd or dancing with strangers to get closer. At one point, I caught Laura grinding against the man in the captain's hat on the dance floor, her arms wrapped around his neck. His hands, his fucking hands, settled low on her back, then lower. I looked away. I couldn't breathe. Later that night, near midnight, I stood alone on the upper deck, away from the music and the heat of bodies packed into the lower levels. I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles went white. That's how Mia found me. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me, looking out at the black water stretching endlessly into the horizon. You okay? She finally asked. No, I admitted. She nodded. Good. At least you're not lying to yourself. There was no moon, just the faint reflection of stars on the water and the low thrum of the ship's engine below our feet. She didn't even hesitate, I said after a while. Like this wasn't new. Like she's done this a dozen times. Maybe she has. And I never saw it. You didn't want to. Mia's voice was soft, not judgmental, just true. I turned to her, and for the first time since stepping onto the ship, I let some of it show. The anger, the heartbreak, the deep, gnawing shame of being made a fool. She's not the person I married, I said. She hasn't been for a while. We stood there for a long time, saying nothing, just letting the waves carry the weight of it for a little while. Finally, Mia broke the silence. We'll catch her, she said. Together. And in that moment, I realized something strange. As broken as everything felt, I wasn't alone. Not really. Not anymore. Tomorrow would be another day, another lie, another layer to peel back. But tonight, I just needed to breathe. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who followed his wife. But there I was, camera phone in my pocket, sunglasses hiding eyes that burned from watching too much. My feet ached from pacing carpeted hallways, my stomach twisted with too much caffeine and too little sleep, and my mind spun with possibilities darker than I cared to admit. The cruise ship felt like a maze now. Not the fun kind. Not the kind you get lost in with a smile and a cocktail. This was the kind that echoed with laughter I didn't trust, the kind where betrayal hid around every corner. Mia and I had refined our rhythm over the last 2 days. We stayed apart in public, only checking in during low traffic times. She was sharper than I expected, knew how to blend, knew how to listen without drawing attention. We had our own signals, our own system. It was strange how easy it felt. Like we'd done this before. We trailed Laura and her group from a distance. The pool in the morning. Loungers spread with sun, oil, and gossip. The casino in the afternoon, where she always stayed close to him. The man in the captain's hat, who had a name now, Nick. Of course it was something casual, cocky, fitting for someone who moved like he owned the deck he stood on. At night, it was clubs and bars, music and blurred lines. And every time, it was the same. Her laugh a little louder when he was around, her hand drifting too easily to his shoulder, his back, his chest. And he welcomed it all. Sometimes it felt like watching a play, like I was in the audience of a twisted performance where I was both critic and casualty. Mia stayed close through it all. Her eyes didn't miss much. Neither did her silence. She didn't try to fix it or sugarcoat it. She just kept watching. With me. For me. On the third night, things escalated. We were tucked into the corner of a crowded club, low lights, loud bass, and too many bodies pressed into too little space. From our shadowed table, we had a clear view of the dance floor. Laura was out there, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. Tight, short, not something she wore around me. Nick was beside her, his hands low on her waist, her body swaying too close, their heads bent together as if the whole world had gone quiet for them alone. I couldn't look away. I didn't want to see it, but I had to see it. Mia sat beside me, quiet. At one point, her hand gently rested on my arm. Just enough to anchor me. That's her, I said quietly. That's my wife. Mia didn't speak right away. She just stared at the couple on the floor. She doesn't even look guilty, she said eventually. She looks free. Mia turned to me. Her voice was careful. Do you still love her? I blinked, not expecting the question. It sat there for a moment, heavy between us. I don't know, I admitted. I think I loved who she used to be. Or maybe who I thought she was. Mia looked back at the floor. You needed to see it. Now you know. The music shifted to something slower. Laura stayed close to Nick, her arms wrapped around his neck, head tucked near his jaw. Her fingers slipped into the collar of his shirt like they'd done it 100 times before. I looked away. My chest felt tight again. That same pressure I'd felt the day I found the condoms. But now it was different. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was clarity. It was pain, yes. But it was also a door closing. And I knew, deep down, I'd never see her the same again. Later that night, back in my cabin, I sat on the bed with the lights off. Just the ocean outside, endless and unknowable. There was a knock at the door. Quiet. Tentative. I opened it to find Mia, barefoot and holding 2 cans of soda. Couldn't sleep, she said. Figured you couldn't either. I let her in. We sat on the balcony for a while, passing the silence between us like a secret. I used to admire her, Mia said. When we were younger, Laura always knew how to get attention. She was magnetic. She still is, I said bitterly. Yeah, Mia said. But sometimes magnets only pull when they're around metal. And the rest of us, we just rust quietly in the corner. I looked at her. In the dim light, she looked tired but steady. She hadn't once flinched through any of this. I'm glad you came, I said. She gave a half smile. I'm glad you asked. There was a beat. Then she looked at me seriously. Are you going to confront her? Not yet, I said. I want the truth. All of it. No arguments. No room for denial. When this ends, it ends on my terms. Mia nodded. She understood. We sat there a while longer, listening to the waves crash against the hull. For the first time since stepping onto this ship, I felt like I wasn't drowning. We weren't just watching anymore. We were hunting. And soon, she'd know what it felt like to be caught. By the 5th day on the ship, something in me had shifted. What started as suspicion had hardened into resolve. I wasn't questioning anymore. I wasn't wondering. I was watching, and I was waiting. It's strange how quickly you can become a stranger in your own marriage. Laura had barely crossed my mind a few months ago when she mentioned the cruise. Just another girl's trip, she said. Nothing but mimosas and too much sun. Now I was tracking her movements like a detective with a badge I never wanted. Mia and I stopped pretending for ourselves. We were still careful not to be seen together, but when we weren't on the chase, we shared quiet moments, meals, jokes, long walks on the quieter parts of the deck. It was easy, honest, a strange kind of comfort in the middle of betrayal. But that afternoon, everything changed. We were at the adults-only pool, lounging in the shade of a cabana. It was part of our new cover. We'd started acting like a couple, which gave us an excuse to be near the action without standing out. Laura had seen us once or twice in passing, but never close enough to notice who we really were. Today, she was 2 cabanas down. I watched her through the slats in the curtain, trying not to react. She was sipping from a bright red cocktail, laughing loudly with Nick beside her. He was shirtless, a towel draped over his shoulder, his hand grazing her thigh like it belonged there. Her face was relaxed, carefree. She didn't look like someone carrying a secret. She looked like someone who had already let it go. Mia leaned close and whispered. She just got up, heading toward the lower decks. My pulse quickened. Alone? No, she said. He's with her. We grabbed our things and slipped away quietly, following at a distance. Mia had a knack for blending in, chatting casually with a crew member as we passed, pulling out her phone at the right moment to look distracted. The ship's lower decks were quiet this time of day. Most passengers were out on excursions or clustered near the pools. Down here, it was just the hum of engines, long hallways, and the muffled sound of water slapping against metal. They turned a corner near a service stairwell. We followed. I slowed as we reached the end of the corridor. Around the bend was a restricted access hallway, crew cabins, and utility rooms. A spot no guest should have been. And that's where we saw them. Laura was pressed against the wall, her hands tangled in Nick's shirt as they kissed. It wasn't casual. It wasn't light. It was desperate. Hungry. Like they were trying to make up for lost time. I didn't move. I couldn't. Mia stood behind me, breath caught in her throat. I could feel her hesitation. This wasn't just evidence. This was truth, raw and ugly. I raised my phone and started recording. Not the whole thing. Not long. Just enough. Just long enough to see her fingers in his hair, to hear their muffled laughter, to catch the moment his hand slid down her back and she didn't stop him. I lowered the phone and stepped back. Mia's hand found my arm, and we left silently, heartbeats loud in the quiet hallway. We didn't speak until we were back in my room, the door shut behind us. I got it, I said, voice low. Mia sat down slowly, her face pale. I pulled up the video and watched it once. Just once. Then I hit pause. Now you know, Mia said gently. For sure. I always knew, I admitted. But now I can prove it. We sat there in silence for a while. The kind of silence that feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, not sure whether to fall or jump. What are you going to do with it? Mia finally asked. I looked at the screen, at the frozen image of Laura and the man she'd chosen over me. I wanted to throw the phone. I wanted to rewind the last year of my life and unknow everything I had seen. Instead, I powered off the screen and set it aside. I don't know yet, I said, but I won't be gaslit. Not anymore. She can't talk her way out of this. Mia nodded. Her eyes were red, but she didn't cry. I'm sorry, she said. You didn't deserve any of this. And before I could answer, she added, and neither did I. There was something in her voice, a tremble of hurt, buried just beneath the calm. I realized this wasn't just about me. Mia had lost someone too. The sister she thought she knew. The family she trusted. We were both picking up pieces. I stood and poured us 2 glasses of water. My hands were shaking, and I tried to hide it. When I handed her the cup, our fingers brushed. And in that brief touch, something shifted. It wasn't romance. It wasn't betrayal. It was connection. The kind that comes from shared scars. Thanks, I said softly. For what? For being here. I couldn't have done this alone. She gave a tired smile. You weren't supposed to. We didn't say anything more that night. Just sat there, letting the silence hold what words couldn't. Outside, the ocean rolled on beneath the ship, steady and endless. Inside, the truth sat between us, no longer hiding, no longer in question. The next move was mine, and I planned to make it count. I didn't sleep that night. The lights were off. The room was quiet. But inside me, a war was being fought. I kept replaying the moment. Laura pressed against that wall, eyes closed, lips parted, completely lost in someone else. That moment froze something inside me. The Jake who trusted her died in that hallway. Now, I was something else. Not angry. Not yet. Just broken. I sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, staring at the phone where the video lived. I hadn't watched it again. I didn't need to. Once was enough. It wasn't even the kiss that gutted me. It was her face. She looked happy. Not wild, not drunk, not guilty. Happy. And it wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a moment of comfort. Familiarity. Which meant this wasn't the first time. And it wouldn't be the last. A soft knock came at the door just past 2 a.m. I didn't move at first. The knock came again, gentler this time. I stood, opened it slowly. Mia was barefoot, wrapped in a cardigan, her face pale in the hallway light. I couldn't sleep, she said quietly. Can I come in? I stepped aside. She entered without a word, like we'd done this before. She sat on the small couch near the balcony, pulling her knees up and hugging them. Her silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like mine. For a while, we just sat. 2 people pulled into a storm neither of us asked for. Then she spoke. I'm so angry at her. It came out like an exhale, like she'd been holding it in too long. I looked over. She wasn't crying, but her eyes shimmered. She lied to me too, she said. My whole life, I've looked up to her. Thought she was this fierce, fearless woman who always knew what she wanted. But this? Sneaking around behind your back? Turning love into this? I nodded. I know. She doesn't even see what she's destroying, Mia said. And when she finds out you're here, God, it's going to get ugly. I leaned back, closing my eyes. Do you think I should confront her? Now, while we're still on the ship. Mia was quiet for a long time. Then, you could. But if you do it when you're calm. Not like this. That surprised me. I thought you'd want me to explode, I said. Mia smiled, just barely. That's what she expects. That's the version of you she thinks you'll become. The angry, jealous husband. That way, she can rewrite the story. Make you the problem. Her words settled like stones in my chest. She doesn't get to control the narrative this time. I murmured. Exactly. Another long silence. The waves outside thudded softly against the hull. The world felt distant, as if we were floating through something unreal. I still feel sick, I said. Like I've been punched in the gut, and I'm pretending I can breathe. That's normal, Mia said. You're grieving. Not just the betrayal, the death of what you thought your life was. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. I worked so hard to build a life with her, I said. I thought I was building us. But she was carving an exit door behind my back. Mia moved closer. Not romantically, just human. Sometimes, she said, the people we love turn into mirrors. And sometimes those mirrors break. What you're seeing now, it's her reflection, not yours. I didn't realize it until then, but my hands were shaking. I looked down at them, then slowly clenched them into fists. Do you hate her? I asked. Mia blinked. Laura, I nodded. She looked out the balcony door. No, not yet, but I think I'm done protecting her. I understood that more than she knew. It wasn't about rage anymore. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about closure. And maybe justice. Do you ever wonder if she's capable of feeling sorry? I asked. Mia let out a breath. I used to think so. But now, I'm not sure. I think she's too good at spinning the truth into something that lets her sleep at night. I stood and walked toward the balcony, opening the door and stepping into the cool, salty air. The ocean stretched forever, endless and uncaring. She'll never admit it unless I make her look at it, I said. Mia came to stand beside me. You don't owe her a performance, she said. You owe yourself the truth. And maybe the freedom that comes with it. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw it. Not just strength, but sadness too. This wasn't just about me anymore. We were both hurting, both betrayed, both orbiting the same collapse. I don't know what pulled us together then. Maybe it was the need for warmth. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was just that we were two people carrying too much pain. I leaned my forehead against hers. No kiss. No crossing lines. Just closeness. And it didn't feel wrong. It felt real. For once, there were no lies between us. By the 6th day, we stopped pretending. Not to each other. Not to ourselves. The act we had kept up, strangers on a mission, had slowly turned into something else. Something softer. More human. We weren't just tracking betrayal anymore. We were helping each other survive it. That morning, we skipped the usual routine of trailing Laura. She and her friends had booked a group snorkeling tour, and we knew she'd be off the ship most of the day. It gave us space. Breathing room. Mia met me on the forward deck just after sunrise. She held 2 coffees in hand and wore an oversized hoodie, her hair tied up, no makeup. She looked tired but beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with effort. I took the cup from her. Thanks. You didn't sleep again, she said, stating it as fact. Not really. We stood there in silence, watching the sun rise over the horizon, the light catching the rippling water in soft golds and deep blues. This ship feels like a strange dream, I said after a while. Like we boarded someone else's life. Mia laughed under her breath. If this is someone's dream, they have serious, unresolved issues. I cracked a smile. First one in days. She noticed. So did I. We spent the morning walking the quieter decks, talking about anything but Laura. About high school crushes. About the dumbest things we'd ever believed. About where we'd go if we could disappear for a year. I always wanted to see Iceland, Mia said. Cold. Isolated. Peaceful. I always wanted to open a bookstore by a lake, I said. Coffee. Quiet. Maybe a dog. She raised an eyebrow. That's incredibly wholesome. Pain'll do that to a man. By the afternoon, we found ourselves sharing a table at one of the upper deck cafes. We sat in the shade, eating overpriced sandwiches, laughing at a toddler who kept stealing fries from his dad's plate 2 tables over. For the first time since stepping onto the ship, I wasn't watching the world to find evidence. I was just in it. And then the moment changed. We were walking back to her cabin when the ship gave a sudden lurch. Nothing major, just a shift in the current. I instinctively reached for the rail. Mia stumbled. I caught her elbow. Our eyes met. It was a heartbeat. Maybe less. But the world slowed. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. There was a charge between us. Not loud. Not explosive. It was the kind of quiet tension that sneaks in through cracks left by grief. We stood close, too close, and neither of us said a word. Finally, she looked down. I should get cleaned up. Right. She turned to go, then paused. You want to come by later? Sunset? My balcony has a good view. I nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. She left without another word, and I was left with a pulse that wouldn't settle. That evening, just as the sky turned orange, I knocked on her door. She opened it almost immediately, barefoot and calm, wearing a soft dress the color of dusk. The air between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like something unsaid had already been decided. We sat outside, the ocean stretching endlessly before us, the light painting her skin gold. She handed me a glass of something cold and fruity. It's not whiskey, but it'll do. I took a sip. Tastes like vacation. For most people, it is. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't sharp. It was electric. Mia, I said. She turned. Yeah. I keep thinking I should feel guilty. For what? For sitting here. For this. For wanting to forget her, even just for a minute. She didn't flinch. Do you? I shook my head slowly. No, I don't. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the darkening sky. You're not the only one carrying that guilt. she said. She's my sister. And I'm here with you, watching her destroy what she promised. And I'm not even mad at you for any of it. I'm mad at her. I looked over. Her eyes were bright. Not from tears, from truth. I kissed someone once, she said, when I was still with my ex. It was at a party. Just a moment. But I told him the next day. I couldn't carry it. What happened? He called me a slut, then begged me to stay. She shrugged. I left. You told the truth, I said. Yeah, because I couldn't live with being someone else's mistake. I set my glass down. That's the difference. Laura doesn't just make mistakes. She builds whole lives around them. Mia stood slowly and walked to the edge of the balcony. I don't know where this goes, Jake, she said softly. But I do know I haven't felt safe with someone in a long time. I stood beside her, heart pounding. The temptation wasn't loud. It wasn't dirty. It was quiet, human, raw. It was the temptation to feel again, to be seen. I turned to her. She looked up. I kissed her. No fireworks. No violins. Just honesty. Just pain finding warmth. She kissed me back, and the ache inside me cracked open, not from loss, but from release. When we pulled away, neither of us apologized. Mia's voice was barely a whisper. Now she's not the only one with secrets. I nodded. But this one didn't taste like betrayal. It tasted like something that had been waiting in the dark, hoping to feel again. The calm didn't last. I don't think we expected it to. In the quiet hours after our kiss, Mia and I sat on her balcony saying almost nothing. It wasn't awkward, just heavy. There was no pretending anymore. Not about what we saw. Not about what we felt. Not about what was coming. Because we both knew it, the truth had a clock on it. And time was nearly up. The next morning, I woke with a strange weight in my chest. Not dread exactly. More like anticipation. Like standing at the edge of something sharp and inevitable. Mia texted just after breakfast. She's back from the snorkeling trip. Dressed up. With him. I was already on my way to the upper deck. Laura wasn't hard to spot. She was radiant. Of course she was. Hair pulled back in a loose braid, sunglasses perched high, white summer dress fluttering in the breeze. She looked like someone living her best life, laughing, glowing, carefree. And beside her, Nick. Same as ever. Cocky grin, sleeveless shirt, hand resting casually on her lower back like he belonged there. They were leaning against the rail, chatting with one of her friends from the group. And then she turned. Her eyes scanned the crowd casually at first. Then they locked on me. For a split second, I thought I imagined it. That little flicker in her smile. Confusion. Then alarm. Then panic. She froze. Mia appeared a second later, walking slowly from the opposite side of the deck. She wasn't dressed up, but she looked sharp. Jeans, tank top, wind in her hair, sunglasses off. Her expression was unreadable. Laura's jaw dropped. She looked from me, to Mia, back to me. Jake? She said, loud enough for heads to turn. Her voice cracked. What? What are you doing here? People nearby started to look. I didn't answer. I just stepped forward. Nick shifted awkwardly. Laura who? She waved him off, eyes burning holes through both of us now. You followed me? She snapped. Are you serious right now? Mia crossed her arms. You want to tell him? Or should I? Tell him what, Mia? Laura hissed, voice rising. That you're stalking me too? Are you two some kind of weird, cruise detectives? She was spiraling, and she knew it. I spoke quietly, but every word cut. We saw you. Her face went pale. We saw everything, I said. The kissing, the hallway, the lies. Gasps from nearby passengers. One of Laura's friends backed away, muttering something under her breath. Even Nick looked uncomfortable now. Laura laughed, high and shaky. You're joking. You have to be joking. Jake, this is insane. You told me this was a girl's trip, I said. You looked me in the eye, slept in my bed, then packed 5 boxes of protection for a cruise. She flushed. They were a joke. Don't. My voice was quiet, sharp. Her words died in her throat. She turned to Mia, eyes wide with disbelief. You brought him here? Mia didn't flinch. No, he brought me, because I'm done covering for you. I'm done pretending you're someone you're not. Laura's face twisted. You're my sister, and you're a liar. Laura opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Her mask was slipping fast, and people were watching now. All of them. Whispers swirled like wind through the deck. I took a breath. You wanted freedom, Laura, I said. So did I. She blinked. You're not angry, she said, almost to herself. You're not shouting. You're not. Why would I shout? I asked. I've already seen the worst of it. The shouting would be for me, not for you. Nick stepped back, clearly regretting his entire involvement. I didn't know you were married, he muttered to Laura. She turned to him, furious. This isn't about you. Sure feels like it, he said, then walked away without another word. The silence that followed was deafening. People had stopped dancing. Music still played from nearby speakers, but it felt distant now. Laura stood alone in the middle of it all, her white dress caught in the breeze, her face crumbling beneath layers of shame and fury. You've ruined everything, she whispered. No, I said calmly. You did that. We just turned on the lights. Mia stepped closer. You made this mess. And for once, you don't get to walk away without someone holding up a mirror. Laura's bottom lip trembled. Jake, please, don't make this worse. There's nothing left to make worse, I replied. And with that, I turned. Mia followed. We walked away slowly, leaving Laura behind in a sea of her own consequences. The crowd parted. No one stopped us. No one said a word. Because they knew. We didn't speak for a long time after we left the upper deck. We walked to the quiet side of the ship, the place where the breeze cut through the silence, and no one was pretending to be anything they weren't. I sat on a bench. Mia sat beside me. She'll come after us later, I said. Probably. She'll try to spin it. Let her. I looked at her, eyes tired but clear. You okay? I asked. No, she said. But I will be. We sat in silence. The ship carried on, sailing toward the final night. But something had changed. The mask was off. The curtain was down. We had collided. All of us, and only two of us were still standing. You'd think after a scene like that, there'd be fireworks. Screaming. Threats. Something dramatic. But what followed wasn't loud. It was quiet. Devastatingly quiet. Laura didn't come after us that night. She didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't even try to find us. She just disappeared. And for the rest of the cruise, her absence was louder than anything she could have said. Word got around fast. That's how ships work. Everyone pretends they're minding their business until something juicy leaks into the current, and then it spreads like spilled wine on a white tablecloth. By morning, you could feel it. The shift. Heads turned when Mia and I walked into breakfast. Conversations trailed off when we passed. No one said anything outright, but the looks said enough. Some sympathetic, some curious, some disapproving. Laura, on the other hand, went invisible. I heard through a whisper at the bar that she was holed up in her cabin, only coming out for room service. Her friends had mostly distanced themselves, whether out of embarrassment or loyalty, I didn't know. And Nick? He was gone. Rumor had it he jumped ship at the last port with a new fling and no forwarding address. Coward. Mia and I kept to ourselves, for the most part. We spent the next day wandering the quiet decks, skipping the buffets and bars in favor of overlooked corners where the sun still warmed the railing and the wind didn't feel like judgment. But even in our silence, I felt it building inside me. Not anger, not anymore. Something heavier. Guilt. Not for what Laura had done. That was on her. She made those choices, lied those lies. She walked through every door she'd opened herself. But the guilt came from something else. From Mia. From us. Because no matter how justified I felt, no matter how real that kiss had been, I couldn't shake the weight of the line we'd crossed. Not because it was wrong, but because it meant something. And that scared me. Late that night, we found ourselves on the top deck again. The stars above were unreal, scattered like diamonds across black silk. The kind of night that makes everything else feel small. Mia leaned against the rail beside me, hands tucked into her sleeves. You've been quiet, she said. I nodded, trying to figure out if I'm the villain now. She glanced at me. You're not. Are not? I asked. I kissed my wife's sister. On a boat. While she was cheating. It feels like the setup to a bad soap opera. Mia gave a dry laugh. Well, if we're being technical, she was already starring in that soap. You and I just showed up halfway through the final season. I smiled. Just barely. But I know what you mean, she said, quieter now. It doesn't feel clean. I looked at her. Does it feel wrong? Mia took a long breath. No, but it doesn't feel easy either. I appreciated the honesty. We didn't do lies anymore. We stood there in the cool night air for a long time, neither of us speaking. Finally, I broke the silence. I'm not trying to replace her. Or run from her. I know. I hesitated. I don't want to make something beautiful out of something broken. Not without fixing the cracks first. Mia turned to me, her eyes soft. Then let's not rush. Let's just exist. Let the dust settle. I nodded. I can do that. We stood there shoulder to shoulder, breathing the same air. No expectations. No plans. Just presence. And for the first time, it felt okay. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. Not the quiet kind Mia used. This was sharp. Tense. I opened it to find one of Laura's friends standing there. A tall brunette I remembered from old Christmas cards. She didn't smile. She asked me to give you this, she said, holding out an envelope. I took it without a word. She's a mess, the woman added. But you already knew that. Then she turned and walked away. I closed the door and opened the envelope. Inside was a note, written in Laura's familiar looping cursive. Jake, I don't expect forgiveness. And I won't ask you to understand. But I want you to know I never meant to hurt you. That doesn't make it better, I know. I won't defend myself. I've said enough lies already. If you want to talk before we disembark, I'll be in cabin 1102 tonight after dinner. If not, I'll respect that. Laura. I stared at the words for a long time. Part of me wanted to crumple it, burn it, toss it overboard. But another part of me, the part that still remembered our wedding vows and the quiet mornings before the cracks appeared, felt something. Not forgiveness. Not even closure. Just a strange, hollow ache. The end of something that once mattered. I didn't know yet if I'd go. But I knew this. The fallout had changed all of us. And some truths don't need to be screamed. They just need to be faced. Cabin 1102. I stared at the number like it might blink and disappear. It was just past 10. The halls were quieter now. Most passengers were in the theater or winding down at the bar. But this hallway felt still, heavy, like it knew what was about to happen. I stood outside the door for almost a full minute. The envelope Laura had sent me sat folded in my back pocket. I hadn't replied. I hadn't even told Mia I was coming. Part of me didn't know if I'd actually knock until my knuckles finally met the wood. A pause. Then, the door creaked open. Laura stood there in a sweatshirt and leggings, barefoot, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. No makeup. No sparkle. Just Laura. Smaller than I remembered. She stepped aside. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't either. Her cabin was dimly lit, one bedside lamp glowing gold. The bed was made, untouched. A room that felt more like a waiting room than a home. I stayed near the door. I didn't sit. Laura moved to the desk chair and sat down, folding her hands in her lap. For a moment, she looked like a kid in trouble with the principal. I'm not here for a fight, I said. I wouldn't blame you if you were. We sat in that silence for a moment, the hum of the ship surrounding us. She spoke first. I messed up. I didn't answer. I told myself it was harmless, she continued. That it was just attention. Flirting. A way to feel seen again. But then it wasn't. And I didn't stop. You didn't even hesitate, I said quietly. She flinched. I know, she said. It's worse than I imagined it would feel. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. How long? I asked. She swallowed. This wasn't the first time. Of course it wasn't. She looked up at me, eyes wet but not begging. I've been spiraling for a while, she said. At first it was just when we'd fight. Then it became, whenever I felt like something was missing. Like I was missing. You could have talked to me. I didn't want to be the one falling apart. You always had it together. That's not true. It felt like it, she said. You were always calm. Always reasonable. I felt like the mess in the marriage, and I didn't want to admit how far I'd fallen. I shook my head. So instead, you destroyed what was left. Her voice broke. I'm not proud of it. You shouldn't be. The words hung there like smoke. She looked down at her hands. I didn't come here for an apology, I said. I didn't come to give you the satisfaction of making this about your pain. She looked up sharply. You think this doesn't hurt me? I think it hurts now that you've been caught. That landed. Hard. But you didn't come just to say that, she said. So why are you here? I took a breath. A long one. I came because I needed to see if there was anything left of the person I married, I said. And now I know. She blinked, tears finally slipping down her cheek. So that's it. I'm not posting the video, I said. I'm not telling your parents. I'm not going to torch your reputation. That's not who I am. She nodded slowly. But when we get off this ship, I continued, we're done. You'll pack your things, and we'll separate. No theatrics. No second chances. More tears. But she didn't argue. I don't love you anymore, Laura, I said, my voice low. I think I stopped the moment you looked at him like you used to look at me. She covered her mouth with her hand, shoulders shaking silently. I'll call a lawyer when I'm home, I said. You'll hear from them in a week. I turned to leave, but as I reached for the door, she stood. Wait. I paused. She stepped closer. Did you mean what you said? That you're not going to tell anyone? I turned to her fully. Yes. She looked relieved, and that made something in me snap. But don't confuse that mercy for permission, I said coldly. You don't get to play the victim here. You don't get to cry and call this a mistake when you made a dozen choices leading up to it. Her face crumpled. I loved you, I said. I would have forgiven almost anything if you had just told the truth. I was afraid, she whispered. And now you've lost everything anyway. I opened the door, and standing just outside, quiet and steady, was Mia. She looked at me, then looked past me, at her sister. Laura's eyes widened. You? I came to say goodbye, Mia said calmly. Laura's voice cracked. You came to gloat. No, Mia said. I came to be sure I never doubted myself again. You always made me feel like I was the crazy one when I questioned you. Like I was the disloyal one. She stepped forward. But now I know. You broke everyone. Not just Jake. You broke me too. Laura covered her face. Please just go. Mia didn't say anything else. We left together. Quietly. Without a backward glance. And as the door clicked shut behind us, I felt it, the weight lifting. The reckoning had come and gone. And now, finally, we were free. We disembarked just after dawn. The cruise port was already buzzing. Families wrangling luggage, couples waiting on ride shares, the occasional hungover bachelor party dragging their feet through customs. The kind of chaos that makes it easy to disappear in the crowd. Mia and I didn't speak much as we stepped off the ship. There wasn't much left to say, not yet. She walked beside me, one small bag in hand. I had just a backpack. The rest of our baggage, emotional and otherwise, we'd already left behind in cabin 1102. The pier stretched out before us, sun just starting to rise over the water. The cruise ship behind us, towering and pristine, felt like a memory we'd never quite believe was real. Just a floating world of secrets that now sailed without us. I paused at the end of the ramp and pulled my phone from my pocket. The video was still there. The one I'd taken days ago. Laura. The hallway. Her laughter. I stared at it one last time. Not to punish myself. Not to hurt her again. But to remember what truth felt like. Then, without fanfare, I deleted it. The phone went back into my pocket. That's enough proof for me, I said. Mia looked over, a question in her eyes. You sure? She asked. Yeah. I don't need to prove it anymore. Not to her. Not to anyone. She gave a soft nod and stepped up beside me. For a while, we just stood there, watching other passengers reunite with family, hail taxis, shuffle into vans headed for airports and hotels. Everyone going somewhere. We hadn't talked about where we were going. Not really. You think they'll believe her? Mia asked quietly. When she tells her version back home? Probably, I said. Someone always does. There's a story for everyone who wants to stay blind. And what about us? I turned to her, surprised. What about us? Mia gave a half smile. Are we a story now too? I thought about it. About the kiss. About the way she sat beside me on those long nights, never asking for more than honesty. About the way she never rushed me. I think, I said carefully, we're a chapter. Not the whole book. Not yet. She nodded. I can live with that. We found a cafe near the port. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place with strong coffee and terrible muffins. We sat outside, watching the world move past. Do you think she meant it? Mia asked after a while. What she said in the letter? Maybe. Maybe not, I said. But it doesn't change anything. Words don't glue shattered glass back together. She sipped her drink, then leaned back in her chair. The breeze tousled her hair, and for the first time since the start of this nightmare, she looked at peace. I still can't believe it, she murmured. Everything. How fast it all fell apart. I nodded. It didn't fall apart fast, Mia. It was crumbling for a long time. We just finally saw it. She met my eyes. And now, I said, we get to rebuild. Separately, together, I don't know. But honestly. She smiled. Honestly is good. The rest of the day passed in pieces, customs, taxis, airports. Mia's flight left before mine. We stood by her gate, awkward for a moment, unsure what the rules were now. Do we say goodbye? She asked. Or see you later? I offered. She tilted her head. Only if you mean it. I hesitated, then leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Not hungry, not urgent, just real. I do, I said. No more lies. She hugged me, arms tight around my middle. I didn't realize how much I needed it until then. Not passion, not even comfort, just connection. She pulled away slowly, eyes misting over. Take care of yourself, she whispered. You too. Then she turned, boarded her plane, and was gone. I watched until the boarding tunnel swallowed her. Then I stood there for a while, letting it settle. On my flight home, I stared out the window as clouds drifted by like fragments of the past. I thought about the first time Laura and I met. The way she smiled. The way she used to sing to herself while cooking. The tiny, quiet life we tried to build. And I realized something. The grief I carried wasn't just about betrayal. It was about mourning the version of her that never really existed. The one I loved. The one I believed in. The one who might have loved me back the same way, once upon a time. And in letting go of her, I wasn't just letting go of a wife. I was releasing a lie I had tried to live inside for far too long. Sometimes, revenge isn't about breaking someone else. Sometimes, it's just walking away intact, with your soul still yours. Weeks later, I was unpacking boxes in my new apartment, a quiet place overlooking a small park, nothing flashy, when my phone buzzed. A photo. From Mia. A lake. A hiking trail. A sunbeam on water. You'd like it here. Thought of your bookstore idea. Smiley face. I smiled. Typed back. Someday maybe. Then set the phone down and stepped outside, letting the air fill my lungs. I was still healing. Still untangling myself from what had been. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't waiting for answers. I was looking ahead. And the horizon? It was finally mine.